Okay, hey guys, welcome back. So for today we're gonna go through how to create an XM8 ExAd app. We're not gonna go too deep into the coding itself, but more the structure and what we can do and how we will do it. So from proposition from the forum, I decided to do a journal. Even though I actually encountered some issues with it because you're not allowed to do multiple edits boxes from mission config file or from the config file because they don't exist. So I have done a workaround to make it work, which I hope you all enjoy. So to do this, we can have some simple steps, which also always begins with plan your app. Like what components do you need, what features should it support, what is feasible. It's always good to create a design where you actually make a mock-up of the app, and you just more or less do some kind of interaction scheme with the data flow and what functions are for what buttons and what it's supposed to do when you press different things. So to start with, we're going to do the file structure, mostly because it's always, or I recommend you to always do it the same. So when we create a new app, we just create a new folder here in apps. We're going to call it a journal. And inside this journal, we're going to have a couple of files. onload.sqf, which is the file that actually, loads all the controllers into the XM8. And then we're going to have a file we call onOpen, which is different data that should be loaded into the XM8 slide, the journal slide, when we open the slide. So like, for example, now when we're going to have a journal, the journal, if you don't understand what a journal is here in this case, so it's some kind of a text block that is saved over restarts and and stuff. So you can actually just edit things, you can do comments, you can do notes on things that happens on the server, and they will always be saved in this specific slide. So for example, now on this onOpen that we are creating, we maybe want to load the old data that we have entered before. And for the last, not for the last, for two more files, we have on close, which we are actually not going to use in this app. It depends, we can use it. It's always like when you decide how the data is being treated, you decide where to place it. We could, some data we're going to use, we can place it on open, but we could also place it on close. But for security measures, I put it on open because I always want to make sure that every time we load data, we clear the fields before, instead of clearing the fields every time we close it, because just if the function would not work correctly or was not called in correct way, it won't be cleared, and there's a risk that we get duplicate data in the app. And so for the last file is the config file, do we call it config file? Yeah, config file. And this file I use to store customizable variables and maybe app-specific global functions like we're going to use today. Okay, so at first, we're also going to have 2 more files, which are we're going to use a background in the app just to make it a little bit more prettier or fancy, and also a logo. So the logo we're going to create pretty simple just by doing here. I actually have created this before. We're going to take these 2 and we're going to put them in the app, which is not there. It's here. Here, so we just put them in. So now when we have created all the files, we want to help the core understand where it should look for the specific code that we're creating and the logo and the picture that we're going to use. So that is exactly what we're doing here. So we can just, to make it very simple, we can just copy paste. We're going to change it to the specific name that we're going to have. I'm going to name it ExAd Journal. This name have to be unique, because if this is not unique, you're gonna get an error when you're loading the mission config file. Maybe here we can call it journal. Gonna give it a unique ID. So in this case, for all controllers that are going to be created, it's going to be from 300 up to, I don't know, today we're not going to use more than like 3 or 4 controllers. Could change that here. Say that we're using 5 maybe. You can always change that afterwards. This is just to keep it easy. Yeah, just to make it easy for yourself. So now we have created this journal map, and we're going to use a config file. Yes, we have an icon. Yes, the icon is not called chvd, it's called icon journal. And then we have the onload, we have the onopen, and we have the onclose. Yes. So, okay, so before we actually try to test this, we're going to create, in the onload, we're going to create back button, because otherwise we're going to get stuck. Or, we can actually wait with that. Okay, so after you create it, you just need to reload. Now I'm doing it in the editor because it's easy, it's a lot quicker to actually see what's happening. And the reason why I load it again, it was loaded before, is because I changed in the configuration, mission configuration file. So I actually missed something now, I just remembered here. When you want to add an app to, I can show this. So now, for example, when I haven't added that to the extra apps array, you're not going to get anything here. So what we need to do is that we're going to do comma, and then we're going to add the class name. So that's exactly this one. So just put it in a string, and we're done. And since we change the configuration file, we actually need to reload the whole folder structure into the memory, and that we are doing by reopening it. This character, and now we should at least see this new app here, journal, and we get this pretty icon that we have created. So the problem is now when we press this, it's nothing here, and we actually can't get back also. A fix for that, just yeah, temporarily, if you really need to do it, you can just enter ExAd client XM8 current slide and do apps. Apps is the home screen. So if we load it again, we're back in the home screen. Okay, so now for next stage. Okay, so we want to create some different controllers so we can actually see something. So I'm going to just copy paste the things I've already done because I've done it before. Okay, so what I've done here is that this is just my way to make it very simple, that if I change something, because I'm using kind of a grid system, is that if I change something, it's going to affect all the controllers, not instead of me actually doing manually changing everything. Actually, I'm doing this on this one. Okay, so take that back. I usually use these ones. I haven't done it now. Okay, so the first, let's see if we can take this away. So the first thing that we are creating is the background. And the reason why I created first is because I want it to be in the most like low level it's behind everything. So if I would actually have created a picture after everything, it's just going to be on top of everything. But we want it to be in the background, so we create it first. How you do this and how you use all these different functions, I'm not going to go into very thoroughly now. But now we are started by creating a display. We're not creating a display. We have when we call the onload function, I'm sending in display slide and the IDC, which I'm not using for some reason. And so the display is the XM8. It's the dialog, the whole complete thing. And the slide is just a specific controller that is bound to this journal. So when I'm creating something, I send in the display. I always send in the display just to connect it to the right dialog. And then I send it to the parent controller. I send in the parent controller. So in this case, I've created a picture, and I'm just going to put it on the complete XM8. I can actually show this by just doing S. So if we now load this, we're just going to see a pretty script behind everything. So now for the next part, we need to add the back button. And same here, the back button is connected to the parent slide. And yeah, the thing I'm doing here is I'm connecting all the controllers I'm creating into an array, or I'm storing them into an array, which is connected to the controller. So all the different controllers should have specific names, just so I can actually fetch them later if I want to manipulate them or add data to them, or yeah, just change them in any way. So now, example, when we have created the back button, we can just reload it, and we have this back button here. And here the back button has the event handler connected to it here. So we're doing just extra apps 1. Extra apps is the more apps slide. And we're just telling it's when we press this button, we want it to go to extra apps slide. And the one is that we are doing a right animation instead of a left animation. A right to left. You say that, right to left animation, yeah. Okay, so more is that then later, since I like to work in some kind of container, I create a control group, which is it's a container that stores everything within the XM8. So nothing is just like for some reason is stored outside or are peeking out of the XM8. So I'm creating a controller that is wrapping the XM8 into a window, and in there I'm doing a list, I'm doing an edit field, and I also create two more buttons, one that is called save and one that is remove. So if I now again reload this, I have this. So, but if I do anything here, nothing happens. So we actually need to tell the app that when we are pressing these buttons, we want something to happen. And that's how I use onload. You can use it here, it's possible. You could just add yeah, you can add all the things here, but since we haven't created this function, nothing happens. So then we go into the configuration file. Now I have two, this one I don't need. Here is the configuration file, which is just a file where we compile and execute code upon client connection. So in this file, I just want to create 3 global functions. So these functions here. So I want to create these functions. So for example, when you press save, I want something to happen. That's exactly what I'm doing in onload here. I'm saying that if you press this one, I want you to have add notes. But if you press this one, it's going to be a remove note. And I'm also sending in the list control IDC for the list control and the edit control, which I have saved here. More to this when we have this webinar that I've been talking about in the forum, so you can actually ask questions. So like now when we have created this, for them to, since we are actually loading them in, we're compiling and executing and reading it to the memory. When the client connects, I have to restart the mission. And so when we are now pressing 6 and we do the journal, we can now just write things and it's going to be saved. So we can also press it and we can remove it. Remove. And also there is a little, it's a little notice. You can see that here in the configuration file, that if you press it and there is nothing here, it gives a notice that something is wrong. Okay, so for the next thing is that, okay, so when we actually save this, and we just go back and in again, oh, now it's actually there, but if we actually reload, it's gone. So now we want it to store it in a good way, and so we can fetch it later, and it's a little bit too much to actually store it on the database on the server, so we can store it locally in the profile mission name. So that's how I'm going to use the onOpen, since that's what's going to be executed every time. Every time we open the slide. So for here, I'm just doing I'm fetching the display, which is the dialog of the XM8, RC ExAd XM8, and then I'm fetching something called profile namespace get variable, and then I'm storing all the notes in ExAd journal notes on the server. Not on the server, on the client. So they're bound to your profile. So if you change profile, you're not going to see your notes anymore. But if you, if you're here, but if you're here and you have the same profile, you're going to see them. So we're fetching the nodes, which I store in array, and then we just get the app controller by the unique name of list nodes. I have it here as well. The list, the created list we do, I call list nodes. So by doing this, I can actually fetch the controller here by not doing anything weird. I'm just doing the ExAd journal because that's the class name I specify here as well as my side class. And it's always using the configuration class when it's mapping the controller. So you should always use the same name that you're storing here, or not storing, that you're defining here. You should use to save your controllers and fetch them. Otherwise, it's going to be issues. So we're sending in the display, we're sending in the map, the array, or not the array, we're sending in a definition of saying it where the array is and the controller we want. And by that we actually are fetching the list controller. We're clearing it. As I said before, we can do this when we do on close, but I prefer doing it on open just to be safe that it's actually empty before we're storing something new. So by doing lb clear, we're just clearing out everything that's in here. So everything in here just gets cleared. And then I loop through all the nodes and put them in. And that's about it. So we can see, okay, so we save this, and now we restart. And we have, let's see here, more journal, and yeah, and it stores them magically. And now we can just close it how much we want, and they will still be there. We can remove it, and there, and it's all there. So it's very, very simple app, but still a bit complex because it has a lot of different actions and different things to do. But yeah, it's a good way. So what we have done, just a summary, we have 4 different files. On close we're not using. We could, if we wanted to, we could have put this, for example, in on close, or for example we could do yeah, I don't know, whatever. You can put a notice, you're closing the journal, or anything that you want to happen once you actually press back. So it's only when you press back. If you want to add an event that happens when you actually close the XM8, you have to do that as an extra event handler. But that one should actually be defined in here. So okay, so we have on close, we have on load. On load is the script that is run every time XM8 loads. So every time I'm actually, like, now it loads. Now it loads. So, but now it's still loaded, so it's not loading once every time, but every time we actually opens it up. Every time we create the dialog, we're loading it. And that's when this code is executed, and we are actually creating all the controllers. And then when we actually are pressing the button journal, that's when on open is loaded. Or when we just open it and that specific slide is the current slide, so when it actually loads that slide, it runs the on open script. And the configuration file here is, as I said before, it's like you could have different, like debug equals true, and then you use maybe debug inside the app. So this is a place where you customize or you declare your customizable variables. I could have put these in in the onload as well, but I just prefer having them here. I just think it's much more tidier and more prettier. So you like divide them, yeah, very much. And that's about everything. So just comment below if you have any questions or if something is very unclear, and I will try to make it better. Peace.